there's still things that I go and read and I go, how did I miss that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Look, I can go jump in my little 4-foot swimming pool, but it doesn't make me Michael Phelps.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax. HIPAA help is on the way.
This is McCarran Holt with Georgia Spine and Orthopedics in Roswell, Georgia, and you are listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast.
Welcome to episode 303 of the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. My name is David Sims with HIPAA for MSPs, and joining me, Donna Grindle of Carton. Good morning, Donna.
Good morning, my dear friend David.
How are things down in Georgia now that you're back in Georgia?
They're moving along. I certainly do miss my palm trees.
Mm-hmm.
I have motivation, let's just say. But, came home, got back to work, felt immediately overwhelmed. Like, didn't I work enough while I was gone? Apparently not.
So you didn't come back with a renewed sense of self. You came back going,
No. I just came back going, well, I could work in Florida just as well as here.
So why am I here?
That's it.
All right, well, good deal. So we still have the HIPAA boot camp seats open, although they are filling up quickly.
Yeah, I was surprised to look at the number this week. When I came back and somebody said, oh, by the way, boot camp's over half full. And I'm like, already?
Yeah.
That doesn't normally happen. So that's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And make sure you go out to the HIPAAbootcamp.com. Check it out. Sign up. If you got any questions, let us know.
Yep.
Because we are doing the last one in
This year?
2021.
I was going to say, please finish that sentence. Don't say we're doing the last one. People start freaking out. But
we've got all kinds of things the plan for 2022.
Mm-hmm.
But the last one in 2021 is August 17, 18, 19.
Yep. Right after my birthday, so bring a gift.
Bring a gift.
Bring a gift.
This is bring a gift and family gatherings. Bring a gift and an unresolved issue. Bring a dish and an unresolved issue.
Is that what it is?
Family gather.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway.
Good deal. So if you like today's podcast, be sure to share it out. If you don't like it, don't tell anybody.
That or say, you'll hate this. You've got to listen.
Yeah.
It's so awesome how much you'll hate it.
I watched the YouTube video the other day, and the guy's got, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of followers. But I thought it was interesting that at the end of his videos, he's like, please do not like and do not share, and please don't subscribe to my channel. It's like, we have enough people.
That's
so
good.
I thought it was funny because, everybody's always asking for those things. So he does the opposite. So anyway.
We'll start telling you, whatever you do, don't tell anybody about this. This is our secret.
Yeah, I know. That's what it is. When you tell somebody like, shh, please don't tell anybody. They're like, oh, I can't wait to tell somebody.
So there you go. Either way, whatever triggers your need to tell or not tell, there you go.
Just do you, boo.
Just do you. Just do you.
All right. And as always, thanks to our donors. And we're going to jump into not only the HIPAA
Say what?
but also it's going to be the entire show.
Yeah.
So we had a question come in from Allison. No last name because can't do last names anymore. But we had one come in from Allison, and it was funny.
I love the subject. It was
the
like,
subject
okay,
line.
you got our attention.
Yeah, subject line is like, I have something to say. And I'm like, oh boy. This
I like
it. Like, kick the door open. I got something to say. And so her email reads, love your show. Thank you for the useful info. You guys make an incredibly boring and tedious topic easier to learn and more enjoyable. Thank you very much, Allison. I think we do. Question. Is Microsoft 365 Forms truly HIPAA compliant? Would love if you would do a show on these types of apps and others who claim to be HIPAA compliant, i.e., JotForms, Zoom, etc. As there are more in demand since COVID-19, they all say because they sign a BAA with you that they're compliant. Yet, I recall you saying that's not necessarily true. So what's the scoop?
Yeah.
Yes, we have said that's not necessarily true.
Yes, we did.
So we shall either throw back the curtain or we shall peel the onion. But either way, we will get to this. So Allison, thanks for your question. And here is your show.
Yeah, you get a whole show. And we really appreciate it because I had not come up with a single topic for today when your email came in and David's like, hey, we could do a whole show. I was like, good, because we are.
Yeah. Yeah. So, note to everybody else listening, send in your questions and ideas because we'll do a whole show on them sometimes. All right. So let's preface this conversation by pointing out that there is no such thing as a HIPAA compliant app.
Or a HIPAA compliant company or a HIPAA compliant service.
Right. There's two mistakes that people make when they're reading these things. So one is that they think a product or service is HIPAA compliant. It's not. HIPAA is something that an organization has to strive to become HIPAA compliant by doing certain things, policies and procedures and security and privacy and all these things an organization does to meet HIPAA compliance. So an app or a service or product is not in and of itself HIPAA compliant. What you're really asking is the business that is offering this, is the business HIPAA compliant as much as it can be? Are they doing the right things? And secondly, is this thing that you're buying, we're talking about apps here, so is the app that you're buying, is it being used in a HIPAA compliant manner? Because you can use the app and it still not be used properly.
Yes.
So let's identify that up front as we dive down into the deeper issue here.
Yeah. Well, it's so hard for people. I mean, I don't know. Personally, I struggle with what to say because you have to say, is that HIPAA compliant? And I don't like saying it, but there's no better way to phrase it when I say, or have you checked to see if they follow HIPAA compliance? Really more clear. And when it comes to apps, you've got twofold. You have to have the business that's managing the app needs to be HIPAA compliant, but you also need the app to meet your compliance requirements as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the business could be great, but the app they brought in, they didn't look at all the security and those kind of things, or often where things are stored. And that's a big thing we run into the most. And I'll never forget one of our clients who, really sharp. They always send people to the boot camp when they have new managers come in, always on top of things, very, very diligent when it comes to privacy and security. And just somebody asked a question, hey, we added this to the website and it's this little chat thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they say they're HIPAA compliant, but we didn't ask anybody to vet them. And I said, because, they do things on the website.
Mm-hmm.
But when I can have a patient request things on the website, I need to know where that goes. I need to know how it's used. I need to know where it's stored. I need to know all these things. And if you never ask the question because somebody says they're HIPAA compliant, so it is important, very important, our friend Allison, that you ask these questions.
Yes.
What does that mean to your company when you say that?
Right. And anytime you're looking at any of these things, like some of them that we can bring up would be Microsoft 365, which used to be Office 365.
Yeah.
Google Workspace, which used to be Google Apps, because everybody's changing their name this year for some
Constantly.
reason. We're going to change the name of the podcast. It's going to be like, help me with everything.
Yeah. There you go.
JotForm, Zoom. Those were mentioned in her email. Box and Dropbox, and there's tons of apps, and we'll mention some of those specifically as we go on. But all of these things tend to have versions that are meant to fall under their compliance and versions that are not. So just using it, like for example, let's say JotForms. If the question is JotForms HIPAA compliant, it would be that depends. As Donna pointed out, we actually had a consultation with not a client, but just somebody hired for consulting, and they were using JotForms. And so my question was, once somebody fills out your JotForm, where's the data going? And the response was, I don't know. And I was like, you don't know? Like,
Yeah.
and so they were like, well, I'm sure it's kept in JotForm somewhere. I'm like, okay, is it going anywhere else? Like, are you having it emailed to you? And it's emailing us the information too. All right, okay, so now you've got the information going other places, and so their whole thing was JotForms is HIPAA compliant. So I said, well, what are you paying for it? Because I learned, don't ask what plan you're on. They don't know. Like, what are you paying for it? We're not paying anything for it. I'm like, oh. No, you have to be on this specific plan or higher before they will sign a BAA. So, which means you probably haven't, signed a BAA with them, have you? No.
Do we need one?
Yeah. Well, there's your other clue about HIPAA compliance. If you don't have a BAA with them, then you either haven't done it yet, which you should, or you can't get one because you're on the wrong plan.
Yeah.
You're not paying for the right one.
Well, and a lot of it has to do with people understanding, like we've been through this many times with a well-known personal PC backup program.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Well, I guess we can say the names. We're not being mean. We're being truthful. But so Carbonite, number of times that we've been in, both of us in conversations, well, we use Carbonite because it's HIPAA compliant. Stop right there.
Right.
Because there are several steps that you have to do to use the app in a HIPAA compliant manner.
Yep.
And that you can't just like flip a switch because somebody says that a tool is HIPAA compliant. So that is why we say, oh, you sign a BAA and boom, you're HIPAA compliant. No.
Mm-mm.
No.
Yep. No. You take, like, for example, Google Workspace. I keep wanting to call it Google Apps.
I know. Well, it's Google Suite between apps and Workspace.
G Suite. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So here's the thing I would always see, and you probably saw it too. People would buy the version that's quote unquote HIPAA compliant, but I would say, have you followed the HIPAA implementation guide for it? You're like, what? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you can't, just because you purchased it doesn't mean it's automatically set up the way you need it to be set up, because guess what? There are people that don't fall under HIPAA that are buying the same plan you're on, and they don't need all the other stuff. So you still have to set it up properly. Mm-hmm. And I unfortunately, I'd never come across a company that had purchased it and implemented it properly. They just purchased it and said, yeah, but we've got the HIPAA compliant version. Yeah, I know, but you didn't set it up properly.
And that's exactly what happens in the Carbonite scenario.
Exactly, yeah.
You've got to, A, make sure they can do it, B, get a BAA, and C, follow the requirements to meet your HIPAA obligations using the app.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just enough. And then, unfortunately, I mean, we don't see OCR suddenly saying, Microsoft, we're coming down on you for your HIPAA obligation failures, or the same with Google. If they want to, we'll sit back, grab some popcorn, see what happens. But at the same time, if you don't go and get that BAA that you can get from them, then it's on you. So they make it readily available. You log into your account, you go through the following steps, and it gives you your version of their BAA. You will not get any kind of negotiations. You don't even discuss it with them. Here it is.
Yeah. And so this maybe a follow-up question to this too, Donna, because we get this a lot is you tell me I have to vet the vendor, but how am I supposed to vet Microsoft?
Right.
I can't send them a due diligence form and say, here, fill this out.
Almost every single large vendor will have a white paper or a resource guide on their security and how they meet their obligations. And we say, pull that and keep it on file. If you've never gone to look for it, then I would say you've never even checked. You've never made sure. You don't need to do anything specific because they're going to tell you in that documentation.
Mm-hmm.
And this gets back to not knowing you needed to do the other steps because I never went and pulled the documentation that said what makes me meet my HIPAA obligations. You are absolutely right. The number of times we get that question because, yeah, I'm not going to be able to send them a due diligence. I'm not going to get even a place that I could send it. Good luck. Right. But every single one of them does have some sort of documentation in place explaining the security they put in place and the methods that they use and how they follow HIPAA requirements.
Mm-hmm.
Go find it.
Yeah. I mean, most of it's easy.
Mm-hmm. On the large ones.
Yeah. I mean, if it's a smaller company, smaller meaning not as big as Microsoft and Google, mm-hmm. Oftentimes you can ask a sales rep or somebody like that, and they'll point in the right direction. Otherwise, you can, you just search it online, HIPAA, Microsoft 365 or whatever, and you'll find it.
Yeah.
But you have to do some digging. You have to do a little bit more footwork yourself, but that's what's required.
And another very interesting piece, which goes back to Allison's original question about Microsoft Forms, is that if you go with those big groups, Google, Microsoft, whatever, and you're using some standard collaboration tools, there's a list of features that are included. And if you use outside those features, that's on you.
Mm-hmm.
Those aren't included.
Right.
So you have to, this gets back to setting it up the right way, is you have to understand this feature over here. There was a big thing about Hangouts chat not being part of the Google G Suite BAA because they considered it in beta for like its entire life. Right. And until they put it under what they consider covered with their BAA, using it with PHI, you cannot do.
Mm-hmm.
Period. Another thing is bringing in all the third-party apps.
Yeah, I was about to bring that up. That's the integration with all these other things into Google and Microsoft accounts is fantastic, but it's kind of like your phone. Have you stopped to look at all the things it needs access to?
Mm-hmm.
And thought, what if this third-party app that I'm integrating has a security issue?
Yeah. The number of times, there's one app, and I can't remember it off the top of my head, but I'll find it. It does like 10 things I want to be able to do. But then the amount of access that it needs, I cannot allow it to occur.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's one thing if an app wants to know my age and get my login or whatever I publish publicly. If I'm publishing it publicly, what was I doing when I thought of saying those words together?
Yeah, I love like that. I put an app on my phone not long ago, and it's like a meditation app. Mm-hmm. And I'm loading it in there, and it's got all these free meditation exercises, and it says it wants access to my contact list. And I'm like, oh, no.
Wow.
Oh, no. Yeah, no.
Yeah. So that I can share that I'm meditating with my friends.
Yeah, I know. It's like it wants to connect to everything. Or I love this one, too. Can we have access to your location? For what?
Yeah. If it's something like, I don't know, the map. The map app might need my location to help give me directions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But Facebook doesn't need my location. I don't need to know who's around me that bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, we don't need to say anything more about that. Let's don't go down that hole. But I can say that her question, about, okay, is the forms, Microsoft Forms, compliant, and they do have the thing. Okay, we're both, and I love the phrase HIPAA and BAA compliant, which is specifically dealing with what I just talked about. Is it's covered under our BAA.
Right.
It could meet HIPAA compliance requirements independently, which is basically what they're saying. It meets them independently, but unless it's covered under the BAA, it's irrelevant.
Yep.
So there you go, as far as specifics on that. And again, then it was like, okay, what about privacy? Are FERPA and BAA protections in place? And I love the way they're phrasing things. Microsoft Forms meets FERPA and BAA protection standards. So again, phrasing of this, they're trying to get around saying HIPAA compliant because they know that's not a thing. But how else do you phrase it is a big question.
Right.
So,
and when people ask, is it HIPAA compliant? That's because your response has to be something along those lines. Otherwise, they don't understand the answer you're giving them. So it's not necessarily a bad response as much as it's a bad question. But we've been trained to ask that bad question.
Because I can't figure out another one to ask.
I know. So it's I don't see that going away anytime soon, unfortunately. But for those who listen to the podcast, certainly we are making an impact with people who are doing some of these things incorrectly. For example, I am seeing much less of the people online that are saying HIPAA certified. I mean, we used to see it all the time. We don't see it much anymore. And quite frankly, I think it's because we've emphasized it so much that either those people have listened or people who listened have went to them and said, nope, not a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that rule number 1, HIPAA certified. I'm not interested.
Yeah.
Any app. No. And that is, you're right. It's starting to dwindle. And generally it's some new startup or somebody who has been in, let's say real estate apps. And then they say, well, healthcare's got a lot of money. It's easy. We can do that too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there's still some wording out there I don't like that, they try to get around it. They don't say HIPAA compliant. They say it's, it's a seal of compliancy or something like that. They're just trying to work their way around it. But, I just wish they'd drop it all together because it's confusing for those people that are out there trying to do the right thing.
Yeah. And it also is confusing for people who are trying to do the right thing and don't know to ask more questions in depth. Because even if they try, they get sent back to we passed X.
Yeah.
But it's all about understanding your use of it. And a big area that we run into are the ones where there's a free version, a paid version, and then a BAA signed version.
Yeah. And in some cases, there are healthcare versions of things.
Exactly.
So Zoom would be a perfect one. They have a specific healthcare version of Zoom.
And when you look at things like, as she pointed out, now that everybody's working from home, and we already have discussed that we know we're going to see more of this method of functionality now than everybody just suddenly going back to the office. I think that we'll have much more of a hybrid approach. So we're going to have people using tools like Box and Dropbox and other kinds of file sharing. Those are the ones most people know. But if you use it and you're using the free one, you are not meeting HIPAA compliance requirements. No way. Impossible. The free versions of any app will never be fall under a BAA anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to find any company that says, I'm going to give this away for free and be HIPAA compliant. I believe if you saw somebody do that, you should also question what they consider HIPAA compliant. Definitely.
Yeah.
I know I've heard the story many times about, oh, well, we say you can't use Dropbox, but we don't block it because what if you need it for something that's not HIPAA regulated?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you don't block it and you allow it, it will be used for things that are HIPAA regulated. And everybody knows how to set up their own little free account now. And when they set up their cute little free account and they start, oh, I only put it here and I don't share it with anybody here. I just get it for myself to do something at home or to do something to move things back and forth between home and the office or any of those things.
Yeah.
I just put it here for a little while.
Yeah. Anytime an employee says, can we do X? If the answer from the organization is no, then you better watch that employee because they're going to find a way to do it anyway.
Yeah. The answer should always be, what are you trying to accomplish?
Right.
You answer a question like that with another question, always. Because I want to solve what you're trying to accomplish. I don't want to deal with the app.
Right.
It shouldn't be a discussion. If you don't know how to deal with BAAs and all this, it's like all the people that say, well, I worked at the hospital for 20 years. I know all about HIPAA. Really? How many BAAs have you evaluated and negotiated? Well, I didn't have to do that. I just had to do the annual training.
Yeah.
Let's review. Unless you have been responsible and actively involved in managing it properly, you do not know all about it.
Mm-mm.
There's still things that I go and read and I go, how did I miss that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Look, I can go jump in my little 4-foot swimming pool, but it doesn't make me Michael Phelps.
I can swim really fast for 3 seconds.
I know.
I can beat anybody for 3 seconds.
Yeah, we're going to do a race across my 24-foot pool.
If I make it that far,
Yeah,
but you're absolutely right. There's a lack of understanding of what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Add to that, so many people that have been careless about these things for years. And then you add to it some arrogance by technical people that they know, well, it's secured, blah, 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 blah. So there's a lot of layers, and that's why I think it's important to teach staff why you use this instead of that, why we can't put data in here. Not just no, but why.
Yeah. And I want to mention this, and I don't know, maybe we can do a whole show on this at some point, but you and I both have seen this recently, so it makes me fear that it's a trend. when
I don't know what you're talking about yet, but I'm not.
When we independently see something happen almost at the same time, I'm like, oh gosh, here we go. But if you have questions about what is PHI, is this a reportable breach, things like that, be very careful who you get your information from.
Yeah.
Because not everybody understands what is PHI and what you should do about that.
Yes.
So we've been seeing, both of us have seen
recently,
almost in the same week, certainly in the same month, but very, very bad advice being given by people who obviously, I mean, not obviously, but maybe they think they know, or they're well-meaning. I don't think they're doing it maliciously. I think they just don't understand.
Think they understand.
Right. They think they're doing the right thing by their client, but the information is so wrong that in my case, it's going to get somebody in trouble. In your case, it has got somebody in trouble.
That's right. So when the minute you hear something and the person on the other end of the phone hears you gasp while you tried not to. Oh no. But and the people that gave the advice, when you talk to them, they truly believed they were right. They didn't in any way do anything malicious.
Mm-mm.
They were absolutely being honest about their beliefs. The problem is, unless you spend all your time learning this stuff, or you spend a significant amount of time studying it, then you're not going to know those answers. And you shouldn't think that you do.
Mm-hmm. No.
And to think that, oh, IT covers everything. I got HIPAA covered. IT handles it. Have you asked them?
No.
And they say we use all HIPAA compliant apps. Okay. Have they asked anybody? Do they have their BAAs in place? And this is where you get into that vetting of, oh yeah, we've got BAAs. Can you show me your BAA with X?
Mm-hmm.
We'll have to find it. Really?
Yep. So let me say, you do this when it's your body's health. If a doctor tells me something and I'm kind of questioning it, maybe I want a second opinion. Not saying he's wrong. I just want a second opinion, right? I want to be absolutely sure before you cut me open. I remember going to a doctor one time and he pushes on me a couple times. I mean, like 2 minutes. He's in the room. He pushes on me a couple times. He's like, "Oh yeah, we got to get you over into surgery right away. You've got appendicitis." And I'm like, okay, I love you, doc, and all that good stuff, but can you do something other than push on me for a minute and then tell me you got to cut me open in 30 minutes? So he's like, okay, we'll take you to the hospital and you'll drink this, this great tasting orange juice stuff and it'll tell us for sure. And I'm like, okay, I feel better about that. And of course, he turned out to be right, but
I wanted to be for sure.
I wanted to be absolutely sure. So take that same diligence when you've got something going on. And let's just say it's your IT guy says, well, this is not a reportable breach, or that's not PHI or whatever. If it's a serious incident or could be, probably need a second opinion. Just be diligent enough to say, not that I disagree with the IT guy, but let's have another set of eyes look at this just to make sure, and call in somebody who's more knowledgeable in that area.
Well, and keep in mind, that IT person advising you is not the one that will end up getting the letter from OCR or from a patient or, one of your business partners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I recall a specific conversation I had with somebody recently, and I said, this is what you should do. And they were like, well, what if we do the other thing? And I said, it won't hurt me.
I'm fine with it.
That's not what you should do, but I'm not the one that's going to pay the price.
I want you to make an informed business decision.
Yeah.
I've done my job.
Exactly.
Right. And that's really what we try to take an approach with all of the work we do with clients is I cannot give you legal advice. Number one, not an attorney. And number two, the topics we talk about, it's going to get down to you making a business decision what to do. Mm-hmm. I just want to make sure you have complete information.
Yeah. Now, if you feel comfortable saying, but my IT guy told me that I was okay, if you think that'll fly.
Well, we have heard from OCR in discussions about their settlement agreements that is not an answer that they will accept. They have made it very specific case. The answer, the IT guy said it was okay, is not an adequate answer in an investigation.
Mm-hmm. Which
tells me they made it very clear.
It's happening a lot because we're not the only ones seeing it. OCR seeing it. So, it's scary. But
so even if they're bringing in an app and they're telling you, don't worry, it's HIPAA compliant, find out how they documented that.
All right. So as we wrap up, let's talk about two more things. Let's talk about physically mailing stuff, and then we'll wrap up with talking about things like FaceTime and Skype.
Okay. So we have physically mailing stuff. This is one that people have a problem with because, okay, I have learned that I had a data breach and now I need to do a mailing So I'm going to have so-and-so send the letters. But guess what? I didn't do a BAA with so-and-so and gave them a list of my patients to tell them you are a patient and your data's been breached, which then creates a breach in the middle of your breach.
It's like Inception.
Yeah. So you need to then go ahead and have the mailing company sign a BAA and then send another letter saying, oh, by the way, sorry, we sent this letter the wrong way. So there's that to worry about.
Or if you want to save money, just include it in with the letter.
And by the way, whoever's sending you this letter, we're not signing a BAA with them either. And vetting them, to make sure they actually, because we both know the number of times people say, all you got to do is sign the BAA, you're fine.
Yeah.
That's
just
it.
Just go to our website and see if your name's on the list of people who's in the breach.
So, I did have a doctor ask one time, can I send a postcard to save money?
That'll be the most expensive postcard campaign you've ever had.
No. If you do, you'll send the postcard and then you'll have to send a letter saying, my bad. So the other piece, though, is don't try to fix it with electronic mail, like a mail service like MailChimp or ActiveCampaign or I don't know. There's 1,000 of those now. Mm-hmm. But when you send out through it, some of them do have what they call a HIPAA compliant solution. I haven't looked into any of those specifically because I just think it's a bad idea. Mm. There's just too many variables. But don't just run off and do it that way either. Mm-hmm. And you can do breach notifications via email. And there is some disagreement. I would love to have OCR do some guidance on this topic, but it's so far down the list of things we need guidance on, I'm not pushing it. But it says that you can do notification, not in writing, but you can do it electronically via email if you have specific authorization from the patient to do a breach notification, not just like a broad one. Anytime you want to talk to me, you can send me an email. That's not good enough. It needs to specifically include.
Yeah, it's a word.
Yeah, include. Aren't you glad we don't do serious editing?
Yeah, that's the Christmas version. It has no L.
No. And then no L. So anyway, yuck. Anyway, see, now you've done this to me and I'm just completely off the rails. The bottom line is make sure that you've thought that through when you're communicating with your patients and you intend to, it does save a boatload of money to do those breach notifications. It is very expensive to do those notifications, but if you spend the time up front and get those authorizations from your patients in their initial paperwork to say, if we have a data breach and need to notify you, can we notify you via email when they give you an email account? Then, you're golden unless they say, well, yeah, you can email about me these other things, but not about that, which would make no sense. However, I know that some groups have done email when they didn't have special authorization, but I'm not going to say anything about that. Anything else to add on mailing?
No.
Okay, so this whole telemed stuff, we knew we were going down a scary path when they gave us the notice of enforcement discretion. Mm-hmm. And we said, while you can do that, we don't recommend that being the main practice. We recommend that being the exception to the rule. Mm-hmm. Because we don't know. Over a year ago, we said, we don't know how long this thing will last, and we know it won't last forever because there's no way that we can, either they have to carve out the security rule requirements for telehealth, or they have to stop this enforcement discretion notification. Mm-hmm. And it's not easy to carve out, do a carve out of a section. I just don't see that happening. So we know eventually they're going back. And if you're using FaceTime to communicate with patients, there is no BAA that Apple will sign. So that is not going to meet your HIPAA compliance obligation.
Yeah. Or you're using the free version of Zoom. Or not the healthcare version, because you can still be paying for it and still not have the right version.
Right. So you got to make sure whatever you're using, you have plan B.
Yeah. I wish they would go ahead and remove that discretion. I think it's been long enough. When it, when it came into existence, it was kind of look, there's an emergency happening. You've got all these other things going on. You don't have time to put the proper thing in place. So we're going to put this discretionary piece in place. But it's been long enough, in my opinion, for people to say, look, we need to be doing it right by now. But if you don't put a deadline on it, if it's like most things in life, if there's no deadline on it, then there's no reason to look at it.
Well, but again, this is a temporary enforcement discretion announcement, so it is temporary.
Yeah, but you won't have people to start doing anything until they hear that it's coming to an end. So
that's what I'm saying is you should not wait until you hear it's coming to an end, because they could decide it's coming to an end tomorrow. Make the announcement and say it's effective May 1st.
Yeah. And the bad thing is you developed this whole entire new way of doing business. You got your patients used to it and all that. And now you got to shift and go to do something different. But
the other option is have your patients opt out of HIPAA as far as telehealth, which I don't know how well that'll go.
Yeah, that's another can of worms.
So it's so much easier to make sure, and if you can't get people to change now, at least know what your options are and what your plan is when they do make an announcement. And I doubt the announcement will say, okay, effective tomorrow. It'll probably give you 30 days, right? But if you have no idea what you're going to do to resolve that, much less even know that you're going to have to for some people, but you definitely need to have the plan. If you don't want to make the switch until the last minute, at least know what the plan will be when they say that, because you've got to notify your patients. You've got to change your workflow to deal with it. You've got to make sure your documentation's in place. There are a lot of things to make that transition. And if you get 30 days or 60 days or whatever, again, this was a enforcement discretion for the public health emergency. And my belief is when they announce the end of the public health emergency, because they're tied together legally, and until they say we are no longer under a public health emergency, and until the thing is completely under control, we can't technically say it's no longer a public health emergency, because as this thing can swing widely, we've seen that happen. Until we have enough people vaccinated where we can statistically say it is under control, that's going to be tough. And the two are going to be tied together. And, these variants are being created. So all the people that aren't getting vaccinated, whether you think you need it or not, even if you get it, if you get COVID, you're contributing to extending the potential for another major problem, because the vaccines now might not work with these variants, and the variants are created by more people getting the disease. So it's a horrible, horrible circle that we're in there. And I'm vaccinated, and everybody, to me, make a serious decision, because you're contributing to creating a bigger problem, even for those who are vaccinated, as well as everyone else. And more young people are now getting it, and it's causing it to, those variants are being built quickly. So when you're looking at that, if they do suddenly say it's no longer a public health emergency, the enforcement discretion is probably going to go away pretty quickly, because they're tied together in a bigger picture, I think. But that gets back to the legal stuff. And the public health emergency impacts a lot of things under healthcare rules. So all of those different rules that they, every time we turned around there in the beginning, it was a new announcement, a new discretion, a new this or a new that.
Mm-hmm.
So we know there will be a lot to bring it back in and transition to the new things that we have to deal with.
Right.
So we'll see, but don't think it won't happen quickly. Have a plan B.
Mm-hmm. Be ready for it. It's coming at some point.
Oh, be ready with plan B. Might want to have a C too.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. All right, folks, that is our show for today. Thanks for listening. And remember, follow us, share us out on your favorite social media site, and rate us in our podcasting app. Give us a review. We work for reviews. So for Donna and myself, remember that HIPAA is not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.